The book, skyrocketing right now, there's an incredible story behind that book. A.J. Brown famously was caught on national television reading it on the sidelines in the middle of the game.
I think it's so amazing what A.J. did, because if you have talent, you're going to get this applause, this love, and then you're going to crave it. But then you're going to realize at some point that you can't fully control it.
And that's terrifying. High performance is a consequence of pursuing a fulfilling life. Your thesis is basically that these things are aligned, like they're one and the same.
I don't want to help someone become world #1 or Olympic champion if it doesn't change their inner world, if it's not meaningful. The thing that changed my life was in the research, realizing
great to have you here, man. I am very excited to talk to you
Likewise.
today. You've been on an interesting ride. The book, deservedly, is skyrocketing right now. There's an incredible story behind that book that I want to get into. And the book itself is it's a wonderful work that I think is in service of humankind in so many ways. I know the entry point is athletes, high performance, but it's about so much more than that. And as I was saying to you before we even started, what I appreciate about it the most, I think, is just the heart-centered, aspect of it, like the holistic approach to what it means to be a human and pursue a fulfilling life. And what is the role or context in which high performance can thrive within that without losing scope or your eye on the real prize, which is like, we want to be happy. We want to be accepted, connected.
Exactly.
We want to be able to give love and feel love, which is a very touchy-feely message. And that there's a very fine line that you have to walk to thread that needle, to mix metaphors, to communicate that message to the hard-charging professional athlete audience.
That's right. Well, that's why your story is so amazing, because how you got here is, when you were little, you felt like you didn't fit in, right? You weren't first picked at recess, and you felt awkward. And I think that's what's so important for people to understand is your incredible success you have now was not this person that's just like, oh, I'm just so talented and, just ride this wave of just, being so skilled. It was really, you felt the opposite, right?
Mm-hmm.
Growing up, and you had all these feelings that you had to deal with, and you couldn't deal with them. You felt like, in your words. And so that's why you had that, you're in your 30s, that time of your life. And then you learned, well, how do I deal with them? And that's what made you amazing. And that's what I think limits people, is because they don't deal with it,
mm-hmm.
and they don't know how, and they're too afraid.
Well, part of the problem, it's not their fault in many ways. Like, there's a sort of societal narrative, which is that if somebody is a real striver and very achievement oriented and is successful at the highest level of whatever it is they do, they're going to be universally celebrated for that. And that comes at the cost of not really fully grokking the fact that there's got to be some pain behind that's driving it. There's something dysfunctional there, right? That left unhealed or unchecked at some point is going to drive that person sideways or create some kind of existential crisis.
Yeah, I think the more talented a person is, the more dangerous it is that they're going to move towards a life of fear and frustration. That's the I think something that people don't understand.
Because
when you're really talented, then see, our greatest need is for love and connection, and our greatest fear is not to get that. So deep down, this is what we all desperately want, this love and connection. And if you have talent, then you're going to be, whether you're smart or good at something, you're going to get this applause, this love, right? And then so you're like, that's going to become your identity.
Mm-hmm.
I am somebody because I get this. And then you're going to crave it. That's our deepest need. So you're going to crave it. So you're going to want more. So you're going to push harder into achievements or looks or money or status. But then you're going to realize at some point that you can't fully control it.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you realize that, now we've got this grasping onto your identity. This is what happened to me, and something I think that you've...
Yeah. Beneath that, of course, is this deep-seated knowing that you're you're undeserving of those things unless you are achieving these things in the external world, right? And if that becomes threatened, that threatens not only your identity, but your entire sense of worthiness to these things that we need to feel human, love, and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And that's terrifying. And so it's very difficult to overcome that striver's dilemma, like short of a intervening crisis. So, I want to get into your story because I think we can't fully appreciate or understand the ideas and the principles that you talk about in the book without understanding you. But before we even do that, like we can't go any further without talking about the A.J. Brown effect. Like everybody wants to hear that story. So, how do we begin with that? I mean, essentially, you'd written this book and a few people had read it and you were doing a few things in the world. But it wasn't like a book that necessarily that many people were paying attention to until a very specific day in January of 2025.
That's right. Yeah. So the book initially came out in 2009. McGraw-Hill published it. And I wrote it to get clients. And we can get into that about the 5 years of full-time writing and research going into the desert. But and it was going great. I was getting clients and coaching professional Olympic athletes. But the book wasn't really selling a lot. And then 2018, I got the rights to it. And 2020, I self-published. I worked on it for another 2 years and added more stories, updated a little bit, same concepts, and then self-published in 2020. So only available on Amazon. And the first 11 days of January, so January 12th was the wild card playoff game, Packers and Eagles. First 11 days, it was probably selling 1 to 2 books a day. And then January 12th is when everything changed.
So A.J. Brown famously was caught on national television reading it on the sidelines in the middle of the game. And this created like a viral moment that traveled all across the world. Like, what is this guy doing? What is this book? He's getting interviewed in the locker room about it. Now he's like a bibliophile. He's got his reading list and there's a whole other thing there. But I want to just understand like your experience of that. Like, did you know he was reading it? Like, how did you find out? And then what happened as a consequence of that?
Yeah, sure. I'll tell you about that. First, I just want to share that. I think it's so amazing what AJ did because very few people read books, and we're so busy in our lives today. And busyness and this what John Ortberg calls hurry sickness. It's a real challenge. It's a real problem that creates this anxiety. And AJ showed the world that you do have time to read, and also that when you're true to yourself, like he's reading the book because it makes him feel more focused and perform better, and also have a better life. And he wasn't worried about what the world's going to think this or that, and he's like, no, I'm going to do this because I think it's the best thing that I can do for my life. Mm-hmm. And that was so powerful, and it takes courage, which I think one of the greatest things that we all can have.
And he was not reading it for the first time. This was like a practice. Like I read this book. I go back to I read it to remind myself of these ideas when I'm in the midst of this high pressure situation, so that I can remain calm and clear. And what he said in the locker room was, somebody asked him like, well, what are you getting out of this? Right. And he was like, well, the main thing is that, clarity of mind is the most important thing, irrespective of positive or negative outcomes, because you can't be at your best unless you have that.
Yeah, that's right. So, Sunday, January 12th. It's actually kind of a crazy week, very unique week for me. So I didn't pay off my credit cards for the first time in years. I had money in investments and stuff, but my cash flow just was not enough to pay off my credit cards. It's like, okay, so we won't pay them off. And business was kind of slow. And my mom was actually dying. So January 12th, she was 91, and she died January 16th, so 4 days later. And it was actually an answer to prayer because she was suffering and she had a great life. Amazing, amazing person. But so life was kind of somber and a little lonely on January 12th, walking around downtown Dallas. I was there to do an inner excellence retreat. And I look up at this skyscraper, and the thought comes to my mind, and we're going to talk, I know, about the 12 steps. And I want to know The third step is surrender to God. You correct me how to say it. Surrender to God as you understand Him.
Yeah,
your life and will to God.
Your life and your will over to the power of a power greater than yourself.
Yeah, so
over to the will of a power greater than yourself.
Ask you later.
Okay.
That power, that God. How do you understand Him? But you can think about that.
Uh-huh.
And so I look up at this skyscraper, and the thought comes to my mind: would you rather own that skyscraper straight out for whatever hundreds of millions of dollars it's worth, and I just written a book called The Best Possible Life: How to Live with Deep Contentment, Joy, and Confidence No Matter What. It came out November 2024. And it's about the spiritual life. And so I'm going to send you a copy. And the question was, would you rather have written and understood that book, or would you take this building for all the hundreds of millions of dollars it's worth? Which would you rather have? And I thought about it. I thought, no, I wouldn't take the money. I'd take the book. And so I thought, well, at least you got that, Jim. That's pretty cool.
Uh-huh.
So that was the afternoon of January 12th. A couple hours later, I'm in my hotel room. I'm actually watching on my laptop Notre Dame play Penn State, a bowl game that had already happened. I look at my phone and I see a bunch of text messages. I think Mom probably died. I grab it and it says, you need to watch the wild card game. I turn it on and go to the spot, and I see Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady talking about it. And I was like, oh, this is probably going to be significant.
Yeah, like a very surreal moment.
Yeah.
Right on the heels of a bit of a spiritual epiphany. Like, I'm good, peace of mind.
Yes,
that's the shit. That's where it's at, right? I don't need all this other stuff. And by, releasing that attachment or whatever kind of allure something like that had, like almost cleared the space for, some kind of abundance to enter.
Yes. And so that's funny that word. So that week, a couple of days later, I fly to Philadelphia. I'm going to go to the Rams game, the snow game. And I'm in Philadelphia, and this guy on the street asked me for money, and I had no money in my wallet. So I said, hold on here. I'm going to run to the ATM. I'm going to get some money. So I go to the ATM, and I try and get $300 out, and it says insufficient funds. 200 insufficient funds. 100, I get some money. I find the guy. I give him some money. A day or two later, I look at my checking account, and my checking account is negative. My mortgage payment bounced. That was the week we sold 100,000 copies.
Wow. 100,000 copies in 1 week. And because it was self-published, like basically it's all profit for you.
Yeah. And the New York Times thing, it's kind of a dream for every author to get into the New York Times list. And I'd actually had it as an affirmation on my phone for years. So this came out in 2009, so 16 years ago. So for years I had it. I am a New York Times bestselling author, a little pop-up thing that would come on my phone. And which I encourage everyone to do, have these little reminders, silent reminders of saying who you are and what's possible in your life. And I had that one for a while, and then I just turned it off, it's been 16 years. Uh-huh. And so a week later, so New York Times list is every week, and a week later, I didn't think I was going to get it because their algorithm is very, they like across a lot of places to buy it and not big on just self-published. And so it was a real surreal moment when I heard about that.
It was undeniable. I mean, yes, they like to see it spread out. There's all these sorts of rules to prevent people from gaming it. But, this wasn't a situation in which you were, trying to game the algorithm. Like it just was undeniable that this was the book everyone was talking about. And then it was number one, right? Like it, and I think you sold like 200,000 in 20 days or something. Yeah. I mean, and now there was like a bidding war to republish it because it's self-published. Like suddenly the rights are available, right? So I assume you're going with some publishing house that's going to put this out again.
Yeah, that was just also a very surreal experience. As soon as I signed with United Talent Agency, they set up all these interviews, and so we had 14 publishers come to New York City, and it was all day long, 9 to 5, no lunch break. 45-minute come in, they would present, 15-minute break. Well, sometimes it was a 2-minute break, but then the next group would come in, and so it was very surreal.
That's wild. But I think it's important to provide some context to this. I mean, you already mentioned, being overdrawn and being unable to pay your mortgage. The road to being a responsible steward of this message was long and bumpy. I think to understand the potency of the book, we need to understand like how you arrived here, right? And it begins with being this very talented, very ambitious striver of a young athlete growing up in Seattle.
I think one thing also before we get there is to understand that I'm just the messenger. Like, people talk a lot about the author and how his life has changed. And yes, my life has changed. Travel is different now. Like in 2023 and 2024, I went to 23 countries. And so I was traveling around the world coaching professional Olympic athletes before this. It's just, there's a lot more attention now. But I'm just the messenger. My life is really insignificant. The significant thing is this message that selfless is fearless? Is this something that I should consider? Is the code of the samurai, this love, wisdom, courage, is that something that we should all think about? And it's really everything that you've used and shared with the world is so similar to everything in Inner Excellence. That's why I'm so excited to be here.
The ideas aren't new, but the expression of them is your own. And as I was telling you before we started, like the way that you've been able to synthesize, many ancient ideas from different strains of thought into kind of a cohesive message that is very understandable and practical, I think is your gift, though. It's not that you came up with these ideas, but the way in which you have arranged them and presented them, I think is really powerful. But you have to live a life before you're able to understand those truths and translate them for anybody else.
Yeah, and that's a good point. So the book came out 16 years ago. Why 16 years until this happened? Like, it's really, and this exact version has been out for 5 years. So why 5 years? And I think it's because I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to share I was too self-centered. That's still my biggest challenge. But I wouldn't have been able to handle it in the past. It would have been, just way too much thinking about myself.
Yeah. So you grew up playing all kinds of sports, baseball, football. You were in the Cubs organization.
Right.
But an ocular issue kind of derailed that career, right?
Yeah, and I think it was a subconscious derailment. My situation growing up was fairly unique with my mom and her history, Japanese history, and the lineage there. And then my dad, he was really against me becoming rich and famous because I thought it would be bad for my character, which I think is probably true. And so as soon as I turned pro, I had this vision problem. And I think it was because they never found a reason why. And so I think it was this subconscious mental block that at the time was the most devastating thing in my life. My whole career, my whole identity gone, totally lost. Looking back, I see it was the very best thing for me.
Oh, that's interesting. So in other words, you were sparing yourself for something different and perhaps better.
Like without knowing
on an unconscious level.
Yeah. God was doing that for me, and, and I was not happy about it. I was so, I mean, as bitter as you could be. Like, I'm supposed to be this man who's so successful, and like I've said so many times, and thought like, every guy's going to want to be Jim Murphy, and every girl's going to want to be with Jim Murphy, and I'm going to hit home runs and be on the cover of magazines. And so this is the issue I think that so many people have, is the story of their lives is so singular. My life should be this way, this version, these should be the circumstances and outcomes. And this is what holds people back, because they're so rigid on, and when unexpected, unwanted things happen, they can't handle it emotionally. And so Inner Excellence is about expanding what you believe is possible, continually expanding what you believe is possible, letting go of your story, letting go of who you've been so you can become someone you've never been before. And when we hold on to our past and hold on to our story, then we can't do that.
We're storytelling animals. We're all walking around with a story in our head that we believe to be true, and are blind to the fact that it was unconsciously crafted based upon the experiences that we've had. And whether it's positive or negative, it's still a fantasy. And it's detached from reality. And in most cases, with most people, to your point, it prevents us from having a more expansive understanding of what we're capable of or what's possible. But like unraveling that and figuring out how to tell a new story is a very difficult challenge.
And what happened to you is you had to come to the edge of yourself to be able to write a new story, to create a new narrative in your life, right? These new neural pathways. Is that right?
Yeah, but it was a function of being backed into a corner. Like pain is the ultimate like lever for these sorts of things. Like short of suffering some form of crisis, whether it's physical or existential, would I have made those changes? It's interesting because, and I say this all the time, like we have the choice to make these changes at any given moment. It's just that it's very difficult to do unless you're pressured into it in some way. And the way I generally think about it is the moment of change is when the pain of your circumstances exceeds the fear of doing something different, right? You have to confront that fear, or these fears are in tension with each other, and which one is winning out is kind of going to dictate how you behave on some level. It's this discomfort with uncertainty that we have. Like we don't like it, and we delude ourselves into believing that we're in control of things. And if something goes wrong, like we didn't do something right. And I think disabusing ourselves of that illusion of control and acknowledging that uncertainty is just, that's just the landscape. Everything is uncertain. It's never going to change in that regard, so that you can detach a little bit and free yourself from self-judgment or all of the unnecessary pain that comes with things not working out the way you would like them to.
Yeah, exactly. You know what? One of the things that's such an important topic, I think, now in America, there's so much, and around the world, anxiety and fear and tension and so much out of our control. And there's a lot of people that are watching to this now, and I think that have this anxiety and this unknown, what's going to happen. And I think there's some really powerful things that they can do when you're afraid of the future, or whether you're a pro athlete or anyone. And there's some questions. You want me to share those with you?
Yeah, please.
Well, the first question is, are you willing to face your fears? And we can get into also, because I went through a very traumatic moment as well, and I've kind of prayed a lot that that myself and people that I love don't have to get to the point where we get to that major trauma to fully surrender, which is the power, right? In AA, and the power that you talk about, and the power that I talk about, this surrender to a power greater than yourself. And so, first asking yourself, am I willing to face my fears? And then, am I willing to face any feeling? This is a big one, because most people are not willing to face any feeling. They're willing to physically do a lot of hard things, but there's some feelings that we're like, no, I'm not gonna. If that comes, that's the worst. I'm not gonna be there. I'm gonna run from it, whatever. But if you're willing to face any feeling, now you've got some control and some power.
So what is the process of doing that? Like summoning the courage to face that? Is there like something that you have learned or divined that is a practice to cultivating that disposition?
Well, I can tell you about this experience I had with some pro athletes that had a mental block. So that when you have a mental block, then you're constantly thinking about it all day long, and it could have ended their careers. And so I worked with these pro athletes, and when you have this fear, starts with a feeling. It's like a panic attack. Starts with a feeling, and then it goes into out of control, right? And so the feeling is what we want to. We're going to go look for that feeling, and I got that from Conor McGregor. He talked about when he was first a new pro athlete, and how he got into the ring or the octagon, and he had all these nerves. He's like, what is this feeling? This is so uncomfortable. And then he started to go and look for it. He's like, now I go into Madison Square Garden and, I kick butt. And so I was like, yeah, we need to go look for the feel. We can't run from them. We got to look for those feelings that we're afraid of, because that's our teacher. Because when you come to the edge of your feelings, where you're most uncomfortable, that's where you can grow, and that's when you can become someone you've never been before. And that's the limiter. We come to these feelings. We're like, no, I don't want that feeling. And so, are you willing to face those feelings? So I asked them, I want you to, one, you're going to look for that feeling. You're going to embrace it. And the way you're going to do it is say, am I willing to face my fears today? Am I willing to face any feeling? And am I willing to have any feeling, even if it doesn't go away? And then I gave them some mantras, which is a phrase that you repeat over and over in your head, to use as a tool if they want. And in the moment when they're really, really uncomfortable, you can use a mantra. And some breathing. There's another one that I'll tell you about, is mastering the ego. So I think this is such a big part of the rich role, what you share with the world, and this surrender and mastering the ego, because it's such a big part of the 12-step process. And one of the things that I'll tell you the story first about, I had a pro PGA Tour golfer. He's in the playoffs, and it's a practice round, and he's got they're playing $100 a birdie, and so when the other guy makes a birdie, you pay him $100. And so first 2 holes, they both birdied the first 2 holes. Now he's down $400, and these are guys that are up and comers and like getting all the attention, and he's kind of a little more of a veteran, and so he's a little bit like, I gotta get these guys, and. Hole 3, he has a short birdie putt, and none of the other guys had a birdie putt. And he missed it, and he said he was nervous. And I said, you missed that because of your ego. He's like, what do you mean? I said, would you have missed that on your home course playing by yourself? He's like, no, probably not. I said, well, you were thinking about them. You did not want to miss in front of them, and you really wanted to beat them. It was really this self-conscious concern for self issue, right? And so I said, when I have that, because we all have an ego, I define ego as the part of your mind that's always threatened, always comparing, and never satisfied. When I have that, and I love to golf, so say I have a 5-foot putt and I'm really nervous, and I got a great approach shot, one of the fun few ones, and I really want to make it. So then you can ask yourself, what do I want more in this moment? To be successful in this moment, or to master my ego? Because obviously you want to be successful in the moment, but what do you want more? Do you want to keep having these moments where you're stressed out and anxious and wonder what people will think? Well, any wise person would say, well, yeah, I do want to be successful here, but what I want even more is not to keep having this anxiety and fear. And so if you want that more, then we know, well, 2 things. No, we know that you don't know what the best thing for you is outcome-wise. Is it to get what you want or not? We never know outcome-wise. Is it the best thing for me? Rory wins the 2025 Masters. Was that the best thing for him and his family? Who knows? All we know is that he really wanted to. And so understanding that we don't know what's best for us outcome-wise, because that should help you stay present, which is the key. And then 2 is to understand that if I don't get what I want, now I get a chance to come to the edge of my feelings, to expand what I believe is possible, to master my ego by embracing this moment.
So either way, you win.
Yeah.
It's rigged for success.
Yeah.
This podcast, this one right here, is sponsored by Squarespace. Look, everybody's got a story to tell, experience earned on the field of life, gifts that are worth sharing, which is something I am consistently encouraging people to do, because when we do it, it turns strangers into friends and creates community where before there was none. To do this effectively, though, you need an online presence. It's just a fact. But even if you're building one from scratch or have an allergy to technology, there's really nothing to fear, because Squarespace's all-in-one platform makes the process incredibly simple. The newest feature is their Blueprint AI, which basically creates a custom website for you in just a few steps. You tell it about your industry, your goals, your personality, and it generates content and design recommendations that actually fit who you are. The world needs what you have to offer, but if people can't find you or easily work with you, it doesn't matter how good you are. So head on over to squarespace.com/richroll for a free trial. And when you're ready to launch, use code RICHROLL to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. As a very proud Gen X elder, caring about skincare has always been basically like something that was just off the table. But listen, times change. I've certainly changed enough at least to understand how ridiculous it is to not care about my largest organ and actually be proactive about supporting it. I don't have time for elaborate routines between the podcast, family, everything else I'm doing. I really need something simple, something convenient, and most importantly, something that is evidence-based and actually works, all of which led me to Bon Charge, which is a company that builds science-backed wellness solutions that fit your life. My personal favorite is their red light face mask. This has become part of my daily routine. It's award-winning, it's lightweight, flexible, and contours to your face perfectly. Since using it, I think my skin looks a bit better, more smoother, just healthier overall. Plus, secretly, it's pretty fun to wear. It's also rechargeable and works for all skin types. So go to boncharge.com and use coupon code RICHROLL to save 15%. I'm in the process of recovering from a pretty major surgery, and this has left me thinking a lot about legacy. The relationship between what we do now and what we're actually leaving behind for future generations. Well, my friend RJ, who founded and runs Rivian, thinks about this constantly. Sure, he builds electric vehicles for all kinds of adventures, and amazing ones at that. His mission, however, is way bigger than that. A mission that is informed by asking a pretty deep question, which is, how do we keep the world adventurous forever? Adventure is only possible with a thriving planet. You can't have one without the other. Sustainability and adventure, these are not opposing forces. They're simpatico, they're partners. Every generation deserves wild places to roam, to climb higher, to be transformed by the journey. But that only happens if we're designing for a future where exploration doesn't come at the expense of nature, but actually inspires us to protect it. And it's for all these reasons that I'm just so thrilled and honored to join forces with Rivian, to partner with them in support of building the momentum they have already created to move toward a more optimistic, regenerative future. I mean, first of all, the idea that we don't know what's good for us, we think we do, but we're operating with, limited perceptual abilities when it comes to that,
That's
right?
the problem of the single story.
But it goes back to the ego. Like, I know what's best for me, and I'm in control of this situation, and this is the direction that I'm moving in. And anything that interferes with that is considered a threat. And really the whole kind of core foundational thesis of your work in this book is that self-centeredness is the greatest challenge that we face. Like, this is the enemy, right? In the context of a high-performing individual, that is confrontational because on some level, there's a conviction that it's ego that's driving that person forward. It's me. I did this. I can only rely on myself. It's about like what I'm capable of doing in this moment, and I can't rely, especially in individual sports and things like that. So to say like, listen, you got to set all that aside because it's actually hindering you. It's not your friend in this regard is a contrarian idea that I suspect with the athletes you work with is a challenge to kind of get their head around.
Yeah. And so I believe the most powerful forces in the universe, love, wisdom, and courage, love being the most powerful. It's completely fearless. And I believe it's the energy that holds the stars in place, spins the earth, grows the grass. This energy, I think, that you've been able to connect with. Our greatest need, our greatest desire, our greatest power, unconditional love. Every human. And so since we already know that, this is where I get the connection with the person, whether they're a pro athlete or a single mother of four, understanding that their greatest need and desire and power is unconditional love. And so that's where we kind of start. Like, say we got someone that's a pro athlete and they're not into any of this lovey-dovey stuff. They're just like,
dog, I'm going to the World Series. Like, enough with that. Just get me there.
Yeah. And so I say, look, here's what we're going to do. I want to know, when you're playing your best, what is that like? What does it feel like? And what's going on in your body, your mind, your heart, etc. Just give me some, so take me to that last time when you're at your best. Like maybe we can do that with you, Rich. Like when you're at your best, like performance, like you're called the fittest man in the world, and you know that you have
Not
all
at
these
the moment, my friend. Keep going.
5 Ironmans in 7 days. So like when you're at your best in anything, like what was it like? What did it feel like mentally, emotionally, physically?
It's a state in which you feel completely in sync, like mind, body, and spirit are in total alignment, and your relationship with time shifts. And it is I wouldn't say blissful state, but it is a state of like integrated knowing, I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but I don't know that there are words to truly capture it, but when you're in it, you know it.
Okay. And so integrated knowing, bliss, this time changing. Can you describe that for me with a couple adjectives? Like the feeling, just how it feels.
Yeah, there's a calmness to it. There's a feeling of connectedness and transcendence with it.
Okay, so let's say calm, connected, and transcendent is how you want to feel when you're at your best. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to design your life with the habits of thought and action around getting you that feeling more often. Would that be helpful?
Absolutely.
Okay, and so that's what inner excellence is.
Yeah.
And so that calm, connected, transcendent is how I think of love. This love and passion and love kind of go together, and passion is the willingness to suffer. And that's something that you've kind of said that one thing that's helped you is that, because swimming is, you're getting up at 4:45 every morning in high school, and you've had this history of being able to do that, which is kind of what allowed you to get here. This willingness to suffer and surrender, that combination is incredibly powerful.
But it also becomes an Achilles heel at some point, because what gets lodged into your brain is that the way forward demands suffering in all cases, right? Whether it's writing a book or preparing for it's like, if I'm not suffering, like I'm not getting the best out of me. Where the challenge that I'm currently facing and trying to master is, how can I navigate these difficult projects and aspects of life, not with this disposition of having to suffer through them in order to feel like I did my best, but instead to do it from a place of love and calm and connectedness. It's like these are different fuel sources, right? One is unsustainable and exhausting, and the other one is everlasting.
Okay, so we're here in Westlake Village, and we are 45 minutes away from the epicenter of fame and obsession in the world, Hollywood. And I think one of the biggest challenges that people face is that this obsession about achievement. And why do we get obsessed, especially in North America? I mean, it's the American way, to live your dreams. And so this obsession with achievement can be very problematic, similar to kind of what you just said. You're living in this culture and you're 45 minutes away from the epicenter in the world of this obsession with achievement. And if you don't have very clear intention and habits and routines of making sure that you're focused on your purpose and how you want to feel that connected and transcendent feeling, then you're going to get caught up into this obsession about achievement. And in the book that I just wrote, The Best Possible Life, I talk about the best possible life, which I define as a life filled with deep contentment, joy, and confidence, independent of circumstances. A life filled with love and joy and peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. That life has one foot in joy and one foot in suffering. And so we want to remember the joy part as well. You've gotten the suffering down pretty good in your life. And so the joy part, now it's really getting into, like you've mentioned also, is who am I becoming? Is very important to you. And so who are you becoming? This is what we want to constantly come back to in our life. And so, because understanding that you're 45 minutes from this epicenter of this obsession, and you can easily drift, and every day drift towards, okay, what matters is my achieving, getting these things, this next project done, this book, etc. Whereas what is like Viktor Frankl says, what does the world expect from you? not what do I want from the world.
Mm-hmm. When I reflect on that, I think about my primary operating system as it has always been, which is that I'm fundamentally undeserving of love. And the only way that I can get it and engender my life with it is to distinguish myself and go out and, do things in the world, right? So any threat
That's amazing awareness, by the way.
Yeah, but it doesn't, the self-awareness will avail you nothing. You know what I mean?
It's a huge start. Huge start.
And my capacity for suffering is a very good vehicle for being able to do things in the world, right? And suffering sort of implies that there's an earning piece to it, like you have to earn it. Whereas love is more about something you're fundamentally entitled to, right? Like if you're coming from a place of love and expansiveness, et cetera, and behind that is the notion that like you don't have to earn it, like you already are it, right?
That's right.
And you don't even have to find it. You just have to like remember it or like locate it within yourself.
Can we talk about love for a second?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you have 4 kids.
Yeah.
What do you want most for them and for Julie?
I want them to experience love in their life. I want them to, the standard answer is like, I want them to be happy, right? But what do I really want for them? I want them to feel...
I define as a positive temporary feeling based on what's happening. So I can go tell them a joke after this if that's what you want for them. But you want much more than that.
Of course.
Which I think is joy, which is a deep sense of well-being, closer to anyway. What I define as a deep sense of well-being and freedom and gratitude, this inner buoyancy independent of circumstances.
Yes. You going to help me out there?
Okay, yes, yeah. And so this is what you want. I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think this is kind of what you're saying. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like this is the mountain that I'm trying to climb right now, Jim. You're here at the perfect moment for me. And I've told this story before, so the audience might be bored of it, but I'm going to tell you so you know it. I'm really trying to overcome this this relationship that I have, this transactional relationship that I have with love. And this was precipitated, like it's sort of the next mountain to climb in like my growth journey, I suppose. But it was really underscored by this visit that my wife and I made with the Dalai Lama this past year. We went and spent 2 days with him with a group of people.
Amazing.
And essentially, I won't belabor the story, but every question that was posited to him resulted in a version of the same answer, which is the answer is always love, unconditional love. Mm-hmm. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, or you struggle to connect with the fullness of what I mean by that, all you have to do is imagine a mother's unconditional love for its child.
Yeah.
And that was very triggering for me because I have a challenging relationship with my own mother. Mm-hmm. And so I have chosen to...
So you can switch it to love for your kids.
So, well, yes, I'm doing that. I think I'm pretty good at that piece of it. But I'm trying to look at this, of course, like as an opportunity. Like these are the feelings I don't want to face, right? So of course, this is the teachable moment. This is where all the growth can happen. Yeah. And what happens if I move towards that discomfort and try to deconstruct like what was so upsetting about that for me, and what can I do to heal that so that I can feel the full capacity of love and of course give it in return and change my relationship with not just what I do, but who I am. Because I think the cost of being so achievement-oriented is that it puts blinders on such that you're missing out on the fullness piece of life. And I think why you're here and what's most interesting about your book is the fact that it upends this notion that high performance and living a fulfilling life are in tension with each other. And your thesis is basically that these things are aligned, like they're one and the same. It's not, the idea that like high performance, that's going to come at a cost. Like if you want to do a great thing in the world, like you're going to have to sacrifice, and other people are probably going to have to pay for it a little bit. And you're going to short circuit your ability to enjoy your life in other ways. And you're saying quite the opposite, which is like, no, like high performance is a consequence of pursuing a fulfilling life
Yeah.
by doing the things that are like inviting those experiences into your life.
Becoming wholehearted.
Yeah. That wasn't a question. I don't know what I respond.
That's I love this idea of love and something I hope that we can talk about after the show in your life. But if we want to think about kind of getting back to the pro athlete, that's like, look, bro, I just want to win. I really want to get into how he wants to feel and what he wants most and help him get there so we can pursue that. It's like letting go of this little lollipop and pursuing the whole candy store, which is absolute fullness of life, to feel fully alive, which is what I want for you. And I think part of that is to pursue, to really think about what do I want most in my life, and to help you think about that, what do I want most for my kids? And because you didn't mention that I really want them to have a lot of money, or I really want to write 3 more books so they can put it on their bookshelf. You mentioned something that was more interior, right?
Sure.
And so if that's what you want most for your kids, you can absolutely work on that and help them get it. And that's going to be where you do this work on this love and understand, this is what I want most. I want to be able to be filled with this and share it with my family and the world.
But the best way to teach them that is to live it myself, right? Like on some level, kids will model their lives not based upon what you say, but how you behave.
Right.
And unless I'm willing to look at this and confront it and overcome it, I will remain captured by it, and I will like perpetuate another generational cycle of
because
trauma
you're so
on some
talented.
level.
Yeah, you're so talented. It's so easy. The default is likely, I'm just going to go achieve more. I'll write another book. I'll do more, get more into my podcast. I'll do all these things because it's easy. I'm really good at it. That's the default. And understand, well, being more successful, is that going to help me get what I want most from my family?
Of course not. Like I've done enough to be, well advised that, another like brass ring is going to not really, I mean, it's nice, but it's like, it's not going to fundamentally change anything about my life.
So this is the reminder that you need each day when you start to get drift into this achievement is like, okay, what's my purpose and how do I stay focused on that?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing that I battle with every day. We live in this world that's obsessed with outcomes. I have a heart that has my own fears and dreams and hopes, and I live in this world that's constantly pulling me off track, and reacting to things, circumstances, and so I want to be more of this person that is so filled with love, wisdom, and courage that when the unexpected, unwanted comes, I'm not attached to that story that things have to be that way. I want to be having this no needs sort of life.
Going back in your story, after the baseball career, correct me if like this is the narrative that I've heard. I'm sure it's only loosely, true on some level, but you were like driving a FedEx truck, you coached high school baseball, you were a personal trainer for a while. You're kind of bouncing around like in this liminal space of like not knowing what you were doing or what your life was going to be about. But ultimately you had some awareness that you needed clarity, and you did this radical thing where you basically just packed up and like moved to the Sonora Desert to live in solitude essentially for like 2 years or something like that.
Right.
So I want to understand the motivation behind that and the insights that you gleaned from that experience.
Yeah, thanks for asking. So my whole life, I thought I was going to be a superstar when I was little, 7, 8 years old. What are you going to be? I'm going to be a professional athlete. I'm going to play in the NFL. And so when I got
You must have been a pain in the ass as a kid.
Yeah. I remember my uncle saying, Jimmy, very, very few people. He kept telling me, Jimmy, very, very few people. That's probably not going to happen. Yeah, and so when I got drafted by the Cubs, it was a dream come true, but also there's this fear of losing it because it was my identity, and obviously I didn't have full control over it. And I played 5 years in the minor leagues and a year of college football. And then I get into coaching, which I had no interest in coaching, but I got asked to coach. I'm driving a truck for FedEx, got asked to coach O'Day High School, inner city, all boys school, the JV. And I just never thought of it. I didn't know if it would be fun or if I could help anybody. And we went undefeated. And so I was like, oh, okay, and so this kind of obsessive personality, I think kind of maybe similar to yours, is it's like, okay, I coached 1 year of JV high school. How do I coach the Yankees and win the World Series? Like, that's what I'm going to do next. So I came up with this long plan of, I'm going to get a master's in phys ed so I can pay the bills, coach a high school team, then get a job in college, do the same thing, and win a championship, by the way. And then get a job in college, win the national championship, and then get a job in the pros and work my way up. And so I go to University of British Columbia, I play football there, start a baseball team there, and I get my master's in coaching science. And that was actually my first book. So my first book was Dugout Wisdom, 10 Principles of Championship Teams. I met this life coach, and he said, let's go for a job in pro baseball right out of grad school by getting to know the people that can hire you. So I sent a snail mail letter, with a stamp and an envelope, to every major league team, every GM and field manager, saying, I'm studying how to build a championship team. I'd like to interview you for it. So I did 39 interviews in person, and I get a job at the Texas Rangers 2 weeks after graduation. So we skipped the high school college route. So dream come true. Now I'm somebody again. I was Jim Murphy, pro baseball player. I'm somebody. Lose it. I'm nobody. Jim Murphy now has coached Texas Rangers. I'm somebody again. And then I quit 6 months later in tears. All of that work, the master's degree, everything, just to get this job, and gone.
Because?
It just wasn't a good fit. And now looking back, I thought at the time I'm a total failure. But looking back, I can see God was like, I've got way bigger things for you, Jim, and you're going to be held back here. At the time, I thought it was like, I'm just a loser. Like, why can't I do this? And there was some things, like they weren't allowing me to coach. Like they wanted me to just put in my time, and I really want to do things. And they're like, no, you don't say anything. Really, just don't say anything when I ask you. And there's other issues that happened, but really the main picture is understanding that I had one singular story. This has to be, I'm going to be the best coach ever. I'm going to go to the World Series, and this is my life. And it has to happen that way. And it didn't. And then I was devastated like a train wreck. And not knowing that this was part of my training to bring me here today with you.
Yeah.
And so I'm driving home in tears from Savannah, Georgia, assistant coach for the Savannah Sand Gnats, now the Savannah Bananas. And I get a call from Major League Baseball several months later saying, would you be interested in coaching South Africa, being their hitting coach for their national team for the 2000 Olympics trials? And I fly to Johannesburg. Our bat boy's living in the tool shed of our baseball field with his mother and little brother. I'd never seen poverty like this before. His name was Gifton Gupe, becomes an amazing kid, becomes the first African-born player ever to play in the big leagues. And we win the Olympic trials. We go to the Olympics in Sydney, incredible experience, get to march in opening ceremonies. I get to meet Nelson Mandela. We have one of the biggest upset victories in Olympic baseball history. It was amazing. I'm still friends with that group 25 years later. And so, but now what do I do next? I have this obsessive personality. I'm supposed to live an amazing life. What's the best? But I'd already kind of burned the bridge in pro baseball. So now what? I didn't know. I go back to being a personal trainer, which it was great, had clients and loved it. And I had a good life in Vancouver, BC. But I felt like I realized as a personal trainer, these people come to me for losing weight or whatever, but I'm like, they need a lot more than losing weight, and they need really inner help. And as a personal trainer, you kind of become their counselor or their best friend. You're really a good trainer really wants to help them. And so I was doing that for a couple of years, and just like, I want to make a bigger difference. And then I get a call from my teammate in pro baseball, Ricky Scruggs. He's in Arizona, starting a baseball academy in Tucson. He said, "Can you come down for the launch?" And I was like, this was the timing that God set up. I was like, why don't we leave this life behind and go live a life of solitude in the desert and figure out what you're going to do with your life. I give away over half my possessions, including my TV. This is before streaming. So I went to go live this life of solitude. And I just didn't have a clear purpose. I had no identity. I was like, who am I? I don't even know what's anything like this. And I wanted to find something that I could devote my life to, something that I was willing to die for. I didn't have anything like that. So I go to the desert. I don't know. All I knew was I can't have my TV because I'm going to go there. If I have a TV, I'm just going to be lonely and waste my time. So all I knew is I can't bring my TV. And so it was lonely. And One of my first New Year's, I'm in this empty house, and I go outside. I hear a noise. I go outside. I'm writing in my journal, and I see fireworks. And that's when I found out it was New Year's Eve. I didn't know what day it was.
Wow.
Every day was the same, except for Sundays I go to church. And so it was a lonely time. And when I was there, I decided to become a personal coach to pro baseball players and teach them how to have peace and confidence under pressure. And I thought about being a college coach, but I talked to Andy Lopez, head coach at Arizona, and he said, the best part of my job is the smallest part, which is the coaching. I was like, okay, I'm not doing that. And then I came up with this new idea. Well, what if you became a personal coach to them? I'd never heard of anyone doing it. I just thought, I'm going to try that. And my first two athletes do amazing. So then I thought, okay, I'm going to put together a little manual on how to have peace and confidence under pressure for my next client. So I start to work on that. I call up a sports psychologist, and I'd done all these interviews with Major League Baseball managers and GMs on how to build a championship team. And so I thought, I'm going to call up some sports psychologists and do some more interviews. And I'm going to ask them a couple questions. One is, how can a Major League Baseball in Game 7 of the World Series, bottom of the ninth, full count, bases loaded, 2 out, how can that guy, down by 1, how can he have peace and confidence under that pressure? And similarly, how can an Olympic athlete train for 4 years for an event that may last less than a minute? How can he have peace and confidence, or she, in that moment? And I didn't get the answers that I wanted. So I called in another and another and another, and I spent 5 years full-time writing and researching that question, and that becomes this book.
This show is sponsored by BetterHelp, and today I want to help you better by talking about workplace stress, which is something that is real and also something that's getting worse. In fact, 61% of people globally are dealing with higher than normal stress levels, which, when you understand the very real connection between chronically elevated stress levels and chronic lifestyle disease, is concerning. While we can't walk away from our jobs this summer, we can change our relationship with what we do, because while a vacation is great, that is not a long-term solution. A long-term solution requires we take steps towards reducing the negative emotions that we associate with our occupation, learning how to navigate daily challenges, set boundaries, develop coping skills, all of which are very difficult. I say this from personal experience, to do alone, which is where therapy comes in. As the largest online therapy provider in the world, BetterHelp offers access to a diverse range of mental health professionals with various areas of expertise. Unwind from work with BetterHelp. All of you can get 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/richroll. We interrupt your programming with an important PSA. Happy gut, happy body, happy life. It's important, but to get there, you need a ritual. Mine starts right here with Seed DSO1. Because here's the thing about probiotics. Most of the products out there don't even survive your stomach acid, which is why I was intrigued by Seed, because they have this capsule-in-capsule system, which is designed to safeguard 24 probiotic strains and actually deliver them all the way to the colon with precision, where they can be released intact. Seed's DSO1 Daily Symbiotic is a 2-in-1, meaning both a probiotic and a prebiotic. But DSO1 isn't just about your gut. It's about supporting your whole body, from your immune system to your energy levels. And since starting DSO1, I actually have noticed improved digestion and steady energy. If you care about your health, you care about your longevity, you got to start with your gut. So go to seed.com/richroll and use the code richroll25 for 25% off your first month of DSO1. That's an amazing thing. The peace, the quiet, the solitude, giving you the space to glean the clarity about not just what you wanted to do with your life, but also what mattered most in the context of the things that you were interested in, right? Like, do I really want to be a coach? Is that really where it's at? It's what's behind, it's like the coach behind the coach, like what's beneath the surface here that makes the most difference in terms of performance and living a fulfilling life. Yeah. And short of of, having gone, like kung fu, wandering out, relinquishing your possessions and, kind of like wandering off into the distance. Like, I don't know that you could have arrived at that.
Yeah, it was what I had to go through to come to, and I think similar to what you had to go through. And that's what I said earlier, is that I pray that my friends don't have to go through what I went through to come to this point where they surrender to a power greater than themselves and have a clear purpose for their lives. The problem is, if you're really talented, it's hard to surrender. The more you have, money, possessions, achievements, looks, the harder it is to surrender.
Things need to get stripped away a little bit before willingness descends.
That's right. This is what happened to both of us. Our lives got stripped away, because I didn't tell you about the trauma that happened to me after the book came out. After the first version.
What happened?
So 5 years full-time writing and researching this book. I didn't go there to the desert to write a book. I just went there, like I said, to figure out what to do with my life. And so I end up getting a New York City literary agent, thank you, Rita, and a major publisher, McGraw-Hill. It gets into Barnes & Noble, which is kind of a dream for new authors, and in bookstores around the world. So this is 2009, December. And you'd think I'd be like, sweet, it worked. It happened, yes. But instead, the opposite happened to me. I almost had a mental breakdown. And this is no surprise as I look back, because our greatest need, we're created for relationship, for love. It's our greatest need. And I isolated myself for 5 years. And I wasn't like in a teepee somewhere. I was in the edge of town. I lived in the baseball academy for a couple months with no shower, but I was not like going to social events, and I was just really trying to have this life of solitude. And so, what's the greatest punishment in prison? It's no contact with people. It's no relationships. You're on your own. And so prisons have understood that our greatest need is for relationship, and our greatest punishment is to take that away. And so I kind of went on my own for 5 years, essentially. And
writing a book about how important experiences and relationships are.
Yes, exactly. And so I had to go through this to write the book. And so 5 years, full-time writing and research. I get the books in bookstores, but I'm in downtown Denver. I'm speaking to some high schools, and I'm having a mental breakdown. I'm about to. And I was thinking, okay, I spent my life savings and I went $90,000 in debt. And those 5 years of writing the book, I don't know what my income was, but it was below minimum wage. I was not making much money. And so I'm going into, a lot of debt. And I'm thinking, okay, you're $90,000 in debt. You have no money to hire someone to market the book. You don't know how to do marketing, and you don't like promoting yourself. This is not a good marketing plan. If no one hears about the book, no one will buy the book. If no one buys the book, Barnes & Noble will pull it off the shelves. And this could happen in just a few weeks. 5 years, your life savings, everything down the drain if this happens. And I couldn't see how it was not going to happen. I had that singular, this is how it has to be. And so I was like, if no one buys the book and they pull it off the shelves, you'll be a total failure. And now I wrote the book so I could coach pro athletes. Well, no pro athlete's going to hire you to coach them because you're a failure. That'd be stupid. So you're going to have to get a regular job. But in 2009, the economy in a recession, no one's hiring failures. Not 7-Eleven, Corner Mini Mart, Starbucks. You're not going to get a job anywhere. You're going to die alone in the street. And so that was my mind spinning out of control, spiraling. And I had when you don't have anyone there, the community around you is so crucial to develop yourself and become who you want to become. And I didn't have anyone, I didn't have people around me. I had a few friends, but that was it. And so, but what I did have is one guy that I called, Ricky Scruggs, and I said, tell me what to do. And he said, find a homeless person and help him. And so I look around the corner, downtown Denver, is this guy with a grocery cart full of stuff, holy shoes, playing a full-size harp. Very unique situation. I go and sit down next to him. I listen to him play this beautiful music. I look in my wallet and I had $100, which means I must have taken a cash advance because my credit cards were mostly maxed out and I had no money. And so for some reason, I had the cash advance, that money in my wallet. So I took the $100 out, I put it in his bag, and I leave to go back to where I stand and run on the treadmill so I can just breathe, get through the day. Come back to that same area, and I'm sitting in the Starbucks. I can't function, can't do anything. I'm just trying to wait for the day to get over. So much anxiety. And the homeless guy walks in, and he walks past me, stops in his tracks, turns around and says, "Are you the guy that gave me that money?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "Thank you so much for caring for me. No one's cared for me like that before." And he leaves, and he comes back with a box of chocolates and a bracelet that he made and a card, and he gives all three to me. And when I was writing that book, I took it to my friend Jennifer from church, and I said, "Can you make sure this lines up with the Bible? I want to make sure this is filled with deep wisdom and there's no errors." She looks at the book and says, "Have you ever heard of the word Zoe?" It's a Greek word, and it's in the Bible a lot. It means absolute fullness of life. And that's what Jesus said he came to do, to bring you fullness of life. And she said, "I think that's what your book is about." And I said, "Yes, that's absolutely what my book is about. My whole life I've obsessed about being rich and famous and being so successful, when what I've always really wanted was to feel fully alive. I just didn't know it." So I started to orient my book around the pursuit of this Zoe life, fullness of life, and let everything else be added to you. You become better at everything else. And you may not get it, but it doesn't matter, because you're pursuing this best possible life. And so I'm in the Starbucks. I open up this guy's card, this homeless harpist, and it said, "Thank you so much for caring for me. No one's cared for me like that before. Love, Zoe." The homeless harpist's name was Zoe.
Wow.
I'm like, "Your name is Zoe?" And because I was in this kind of a daze, and I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah." I go, "Do you know what your name means?" He said, "No." I said, "It means absolute fullness of life. I've been studying that for 5 years. I just wrote a book about it." So I wrote, "Dear Zoe, thank you so much for sharing your beautiful music with me today. You don't know what that means to me. Love, Jim." I give him the book. I never see him again. So that's February 2010. And that's when my life started to change. 6 weeks later, April 1st, 2010, is the day I'll never forget. So now it's, 15 years ago? I have all this anxiety, right? And I go to a friend's house. I go to a friend's house, and he's really having a really hard time in his life, and I go to support him. Knock on the door. I still remember what he's wearing. And he says, I say, "Hey, Nick, how's it going?" He's like, "Jim, let's go to my friend's house." And so I'm like, "Okay, whatever you want to do." So we go to his friend's house, this Iranian guy, and I walk in, and he's cooking dinner at 10 a.m. And he starts to tell me about my life, but I never met him before, like this prophetic weird thing. And he's like, you're banging your head against the wall, and you're not getting anywhere, and you're always obsessed about some goal. And I'm like, how does this guy know about me? This is exactly how I feel. And then this gal in the house, Jamie, I'd never met her. She walks over, and she drew a picture of a kite, hands it to me, and says, "What's wrong with this picture?" And I said, "Well, your kite doesn't have a string." And she said, "Yeah, that kite is you. A slight breeze will blow you away." And I was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly how I feel. This is crazy. And so they said, "Can we pray for you?" And so my personal philosophy is always accept free prayer. So they pray for me. They said, "You should come to our Bible study tonight." I go to the Bible study that night, and I'll never forget that night. I felt God saying, "There's nothing you've ever done or could ever do would change how much I love you." God, as I understood him, says this to me. And I felt like I had a million things to do, the weight of the world on my shoulders. It all had to be done yesterday, and I didn't know how to do it. And it all fell off that night. This extreme anxiety to extreme peace is a night I'll never forget, April 1st, 2010. And so that night I said, "God, I'll surrender this 12-step start." I was like, I'll surrender. Just tell me what to do with my life. I'll do whatever you want. And like I said, if you have a lot of skills and talents and money and possessions and achievements, it's hard to surrender. Mm-hmm. But I felt like I had nothing. So, and that's where I had to come to be able to surrender. And so I say that prayer, and then that's when everything started to get a little crazy.
Wow. That's an incredible story.
There's a little more. Can I tell you
this?
This little
continue.
We got about 2 more minutes of this story.
Keep going.
A year later, I'm in my friend's house in North Vancouver, and I'm about to walk out. So in about a 1.5 year period, there's 3 or 4 times total strangers tell me, God wanted me to tell you this. And it never happened to me before or after. just this 1.5 year period. And so it's kind of strange, right? And so a 1.5 year later, summer of 2011, in my friend's house, about to leave, his mom calls on Skype from India, and we're in North Vancouver, BC. And I said, oh, tell her I said hello as I'm walking out the door. She says, oh, Jim's there. My friend wants to talk to Jim. I was like, oh, okay. So I sit in front of the laptop. Lady had never seen me before, other side of the world. She said, God wanted me to tell you a couple things. And I was like, okay. She said, God, everything that you've been going through has been training for you. God's going to bring people from all over the world to work with you. It's going to happen soon. He's going to bless you, and you're going to know it's from God. It was very specific. And I'd never had the stranger tell me anything very specific about what's going to happen in my life like that. A couple of weeks later, I'm sleeping alone in my house, and I hear a voice, and it said, Jim, things are going to happen fast. Are you ready? And I assumed it was God because I live alone. So I was like, yes, God, I'm ready. And my alarm goes off right away. I was like, oh, maybe he's serious, because my eyes were half closed and I was half awake. And then a couple of weeks later, that's when everything started. Jude O'Reilly, caddy in Dublin, Ireland, contacts me and says, hey, I read Inner Excellence. Can you talk to my boss? He really could use your help. His boss was a golfer in Sweden named Henrik Stenson. I fly out there to work with Henrik. A couple of weeks later, get a call from Tigers coach Sean Foley. I read Inner Excellence. Can you talk to one of my clients? I fly out to California. I think it was the Chevron event. Meet with Sean and Hunter Mahan. A few weeks after that, I get a call from the CEO of Yum Brands, which is Taco Bell, KFC, Pizza Hut. I read Inner Excellence. I'd like to work with you. He sends the book to executives in Europe. I start to work with some of them. One of them, I said, hey, you should come to Vancouver and do an Inner Excellence retreat. He agrees to do it. Then I think, okay, now what is an Inner Excellence retreat? I didn't tell him I hadn't done one before. So I put together this retreat. He does it. He's like, this is extraordinary. Can you bring the same retreat to my team in Europe, my leadership team? I fly out to Europe. I do this Inner Excellence retreat. And in the retreat, you clarify your life purpose and you learn Inner Excellence principles. And it was really one of the best weeks of my life, just so alive. And I'm still friends with it was the head of KFC Spain, KFC Germany, KFC Netherlands, and me. And I'd never done a corporate retreat, and I was so nervous, but God totally blessed it. And it was an extraordinary experience. And so Henrik goes on to win the FedEx Cup 1.5 years later. Hunter Mahan wins a PGA Tour event within several months, wins the World Championship match play several months after that. I've been coaching professional athletes and Olympic athletes around the world ever since, and executives, and doing these retreats. And now I get to be on the Rich Roll podcast.
So what do you make of all of that? Like, if you have to distill that down into some kind of message that you were given, or a message to somebody who's watching or listening to this. Like, what do you want people to extract from that story?
There is a God who created the universe. I mean, there's three. I was talking to a friend who was an agnostic. There's really three options. There's no God, there's multiple gods, or there's one God. And I think it's really the most important thing you'll ever do is ask yourself, well, what is it? And think deeply about it. And the God that I believe in, I wanted to find out about, because step 3 of the 12 steps asks you to surrender your life and will to God as you understand him. And so the God I believe in is filled with unconditional love, and wants us all to live with absolute fullness of life. And that's why he sent his son for us to live that life. And I had this obsession with this life that I thought was the best possible life. And it was, God had something far better for me, but I was trying to push a square peg into a round hole. And I didn't know it. I just kept pushing and pushing. And like you talk about so much is this alignment and spiritual growth. And that's what Inner Excellence is. It's like, look, there is an energy that grows the grass and spins the earth and holds the stars in place. This energy, call him God, I call it the creator of the universe. But there is an energy that we can all connect with. And it's this energy of love. But you have to surrender your little power, your little vision. When I say you, I mean me and all humans, for the power of the universe. That's what we all can do. And that's what's available to everybody.
Beautifully put. What I make of that is basically the idea that if you think you're in control of your life, or you're driving the train from a place of ego and self-will, it's not really going to work out. And if you want a chance at a bigger life, a life that perhaps you can't even imagine for yourself, you're going to have to surrender that self-will to a power greater than yourself. And until you do that, you're going to be on some kind of hamster wheel that may go someplace, but even if you get there, isn't going to be what you thought it was. It's not going to give you that feeling that you always thought that it would. And in your case, you were somebody who already had a rich relationship with God, living your life based on faith on some level. Way a bit. On some level, right?
We're all human.
So here's the thing, but you're still that kid, that confident, perhaps a little bit cocky kid who's like, I'm destined for greatness, and this is the way it's going to work out, and I'm going to make it happen. Like, this is what we're doing. Yeah. And you're so attached to this. You're so attached that you're going to be someone, and this is what it's going to look like. Even after writing this book about how that's not really the way to be,
Yes.
and God, higher power, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is just not going to let you have that. Like, there's no way that this guy who's written this book that's full of wisdom is gonna. I'm not going to let him go out into the world and talk about it, because he's not actually living it, right? And until he does, he's benched, right?
Yes.
And you had to, go through what you went through until you finally, were willing to let it all go. And surrender is a very loaded word for a lot of people. It's associated with giving up or, throwing in the towel. But it's really this courageous act of trust where you say, I'm not in control here. There's something else going on here, and I am going to trust that I will be guided, which is incredibly threatening for anyone who has been driving their own train their entire life. But not only is it this incredibly cathartic thing that releases all this baggage and all this pressure and allows you to kind of navigate through life more freely, it opens you up for the miracle that you can't see. And it's like you had to burn in the fire to be the phoenix so that you could rise. And it's like you had to learn that lesson before you could go and do the things that you're doing now, because you would not have been a worthy steward of the message because you weren't walking the talk.
Yes, exactly. And I think, like you said the point so well, surrender is not a word that Western culture is really likes to use. But it really is the most powerful thing that someone can do. And so you can think about it as like, say, an alcoholic surrendering the keys to someone who's sober. It's definitely the wisest thing that you can do. It's the sunflower surrendering to the sun. It's the little lollipop for the whole candy store. That's what we're talking about.
We're all just walking around with our space helmets on, thinking we know what's going on, and just bumping into walls all over the place.
That's why humility is so crucial, an accurate view of self.
Yeah, and humility, is best when earned the hard way, I think, right? Like when you've been ground down so that you can really honestly inhabit it. And that's the energy that you give off. Like the humility that you have is a very real thing. Mm-hmm. And anybody who spends 5 seconds with you can feel it coming off of you.
There's a guy that I listen to a lot now, Tyler Staton, and over at Bridgetown, and I'm telling everyone about him because I think his message is so powerful. And he had stage 4 cancer in his early 30s. And I think that's why he's so powerful, because of that.
Because
that forced him to do what you've done.
Let go of every idea of what he thought his life would be.
Yeah, and surrender to this power greater than himself, and have a sense of real accuracy about my life is very fragile. I could lose at any moment, and understanding that that's true every single day, and waking up with that understanding, and so to live it fully.
Mm-hmm. If somebody has been defining success in a traditional way their entire life and has been successful as a result of that, or as a byproduct on some level of that, how do you disabuse people of that and redefine success for them? And what is that redefinition?
Yeah, so we have 4 daily goals that help you redefine success on a daily basis. But it's really what I do in the retreats and with clients is help them take these steps to really look at, what do I want most in my life? And that's like, we don't want millions of dollars or millions of followers for that itself. We want what we think it'll bring us. And in this book and in Best Possible Life, I talk about this question of what would you rather have, a $10 million house on the water, paid off, or would you rather live in an apartment, paycheck to paycheck, no savings the rest of your life, but be guaranteed amazing experiences, deep, enriching relationships filled with love, joy, peace every single day, your whole life? Which would you rather have? And I know for my life, most of my life, I don't have to think about it. I'll take the house. Mm-hmm. Until I had a few experiences that drove me to this traumatic surrender. Then I started to really think about, well, what do I really want most? Because if you never had anxiety, why do you want peace? You need to experience the pain to, like you said, to really make these changes in your life. And so that's what inner excellence is. It's say, hey, let's find out what you want most and let's go for that directly.
The house, the car, the vacation home, the promotion, whatever it is, we confuse these things for the things we really want. Like the reason we want them, it's about status or a sense of security. But beneath all of that, it's like, well, why do you want status? So that you're loved and appreciated.
Yes.
And, why do you want security? Because you have some fear, like you have a discomfort with uncertainty, right? That will never be resolved, no matter how big your house is or how much money is in your bank account, right? So essentially the message is like sidestep all of those distractions, because you can meet all of those needs in a cost-free way if you change your mindset and your behavior.
Yeah, it's like we need a GPS because we're constantly getting, like a 747 is constantly off track going from Seattle to San Diego, and it just constantly brings it back on track with the GPS. That's what we need, because we live in this culture that's obsessed about these superficial transactions. And we need this GPS to constantly bring us back. So we need to set up our environment that's very intentional of what we see and interact with every day. That's moving us towards what's lasting and permanent instead of the temporary and transactional.
Mm-hmm. So a lot of this has to do with retraining the mind and mindset. You talk about the monkey mind and the critical mind, the negative self-talk, the ego. Like all of these things are interference that derail our best selves. But if you have a lifetime of lambasting yourself in your own mind and have never known anything different than that, how do you begin to untangle that knot and get people to develop a better story about who they are and what they're capable of?
Yeah, there's a couple things that I think about, and I think about actually inner excellence disciplines. We're coming out with an inner excellence workbook here next year, and they'll have the disciplines in there. But they want to simplify your life. So anxiety, and when you talk about someone who has a lot of negative thoughts and beating themselves up, that's really tied to too many thoughts and anxiety. And so we need to really simplify life down. Really, in my mind, to one sentence. Like, for example, my life purpose is to share God's love, wisdom, and courage with athletes and leaders around the world, with everybody, but that's kind of that little niche. And so simplify your life. And then, because we just have way too much coming at us, too much information, too much negativity, we need to really orient your life, your environment, your people around what's most important to you, how you want to live and feel, who you want to become. And we're all walking in my opinion, either love or fear, some version of love or fear. We're walking in gratitude or entitlement, this expressive, creativity, or this self-conscious, self-protective energy. And so one of the things that's important is doing hard things, making sure your life is this. Now we're getting into the suffering part, which you've mastered, is depriving the senses. or you can say depriving the appetites. It's kind of this. I'm no expert on asceticism, but this ascetic ideal is we just have too much coming at us in general. Mm-hmm. That's why this anxiety. There's too much information, too many thoughts. We need to really narrow it down and not be constantly giving in to because the problem with the addiction is, this things that prevent our growth. And the phone is something that really can prevent your growth and get the dopamine hits from constantly reaching for the phone. And so that's where when we regularly deprive the appetites, like reaching for the phone or fasting and things like that, then we can start to get a little more clarity.
How do you counsel professional athletes on that? Like, these are people who are getting just an insane amount of attention. They're getting paid a ridiculous amount of money. And so the allure of all of these material things that are out there and available to them make the asceticism aspect of this a lot more difficult than it would even for a normal person.
Yeah, in fact, on the way here, driving here, I was talking to a Major League Baseball player about this. I said, one of the things that's important for you, I said, your pro baseball player is immersed in this culture like 12 hours a day, every day. Even on your days off, you're with your coworkers. And this is obsession with results and outcomes. And so what is important for you is to find, how can I spend time every day with zero thoughts on baseball? Ideally, zero thoughts at all. Like, for example, if you're in a cold plunge, you're probably not self-conscious. Yeah. What are people thinking about me? And am I going to get a hit tonight? You're just like trying to get through it, right? And so getting into your mixing into your life regular ways to clear your mind, renew the mind, and stop thinking about the to-do list.
Meditation, breathing exercises, you talk about visualization.
Yeah, part of the 12 steps that you do.
The big one, though, where the intersection with the 12 steps is really most meaningful, has to do with the story that you just told, where you got some of the only money that you had and you went and you gave it to this guy, right? On the advice of someone who said, you need to do something for somebody else. This is core to recovery, in that service is the ultimate antidote to self-obsession, and self-obsession being the real infection that you're trying to cure people of on this path towards inner excellence. Developing a service-minded approach to life, where you're entering situations looking for what you can contribute and what you can give, rather than what you're going to extract from it to garnish your ego. In my experience, this is the ultimate, I hate the word life hack, but honestly, we're all self-obsessed from time to time, and we're caught up in our own narrative about what's happening or what's not happening. And this guy did that, and I have too much to do. And to just if you want to really get out of yourself, it doesn't have to be going to a soup kitchen. You pick up the phone and you call someone who you know is having a hard time, or you just make yourself available to somebody who could benefit from your open-heartedness, even if it's just a small gesture. These are the things that I think are the things that move the needle the most in disabusing ourselves of our ego and our story and all of the things that we think are benefiting us, but are actually our biggest Achilles heels.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing that you can do, it reminded me of when you're talking about that serving, is there's going to be somebody who's listening to this who has a friend that's going to be moving soon. When you help someone move and you do it joyfully and stay to the very end and don't ask for a single thing and don't act like it's a big chore, that is something that friend will always remember. It's so powerful. When you bend over backwards to help someone else out, it really helps you out. Mm-hmm. The other thing I was going to say about what you just said that's so powerful is serving in secret. I think John Ortberg talks about this. When you serve in secret, it frees yourself from self-consciousness, frees yourself from what are people thinking about me? This unconditional love, when you give this love, it really empowers you every time you do it.
It's something that we misinterpret as a sacrifice or some kind of like martyrdom or something like that. But the truth is, like, if you want to feel good, this is the way to do it. It will make you feel more connected to other people,
joy
to
comes
life,
from love.
all of this, right? So it isn't, it's an act of love, right? And you're like, this is an imposition, this is a distraction, it's annoying or whatever. And then it gives you all the things that you're thinking you're going to get by doing all the things that are, causing your busy life on the other side.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so if I get promoted and I get 1 million followers, I get $1 million, or win a gold medal, then I'm going to have this joy. If I go help my friend move, I'm going to have joy.
I know.
No, I got to go.
Jim, why is it rigged this way?
I always tell people, I was like, I'm not saying, how I would have done it. Like the best possible life, 1 foot in joy and 1 foot in suffering. I wouldn't have created it this way. I'm just saying this is how the universe works. For me, I wish it was 1 foot in joy, 1 foot in joy. That's, I think that's going to be heaven.
Yeah. Is it true that like your great-great-great-grandfather was one of the last samurai?
Yes.
This is true, right? And so the samurai philosophy is also infused in the book. So talk a little bit about like that and how you think about that philosophy and on some level genetically embody it.
Yeah, I mean, Japan is my favorite country in the world. I guess it's kind of in my spirit. And my mom, she's full Japanese, and so her family has this incredible lineage. And I mean, even in her own family directly, like her brother is a nuclear scientist, and another brother is a judge honored at the Emperor's Palace, and another brother was an editor of a major paper. But that kind of the ethos of the samurai. What was really cool was I'm doing this research on. I started out with writing. I just want to write the best book ever written on mental toughness. And then along the way, I found out that I realized love, wisdom, and courage are kind of the 3 pillars that I believe are the most powerful forces in the universe. And then I'm studying about the samurai, and then I come across the Bushido code, the samurai code, and then it says love, wisdom, and courage. And I was like, oh my gosh, it's like in me. This is crazy.
This is your destiny after all.
This is my DNA.
Jim, right?
Yeah. And so when I was writing the book, I had this. It started off with, okay, I'm just going to write the best book on how to have the most peace and confidence under the most pressure, and so people can just achieve extraordinarily. And then I realized I don't want to help someone become world #1 or Olympic champion if it doesn't change their inner world, if it's not meaningful. Like, am I just going to help someone be really, really successful in their outer world? And what's the meaning in that? And so I was like, I need to do something more than just help people achieve. And then the thing that changed my life was in the research, realizing that the path to having the most peace and confidence, to performing your best under the most pressure, which is many people in America today, more than a pro athlete, working 2 jobs, kids at home, that path, training your heart and mind for that, is the same path of living the best possible life. The life with that deep contentment, joy, amazing experiences, deep enriching relationships where you're learning and growing and making a difference, is the same path. That's what changed my life. That's what inner excellence is. This wholehearted path where, like, when you talk about a lot, like being in sync and surrendering to this greater power, that's what inner excellence is.
And that's the big contrarian is the wrong word, but I would imagine kind of challenging idea for a lot of people, as we mentioned earlier, like this idea that these 2 things are of a piece rather than at war with each other. So in your practice of working with athletes and other high performers, is it a challenge to get that person's head around that? Because if they're successful because they've compartmentalized their life in a certain way, what you're suggesting is a bit of a threat. Like you gotta tear down that house, and we're going to build a new one from the ground up that takes into consideration all of these things that you feel like you have to sacrifice for the case of greatness.
Well, I want to get to the 4 daily goals that I mentioned earlier, and before I get to that, I want to talk about kind of how we start with inner excellence. And like I shared previously, that I want to know how you want to feel when you're at your very best. And so this connectedness that you talked about, this transcendence, and so then I want to know like who you want to become, which is the exact words that you said are really crucial, right? Who are you becoming? And maybe I'm sure everyone wants to hear that. Actually, that's the billboard, right?
Yeah, I mean that was my answer to a question that Tim Ferriss asked me. He's like, if you could put a phrase up on a billboard, like what would it be? And my initial answer was like, who are you? Like who am I or whatever, which is like it's a profound question, but it's sort of like, all right, it's easy to dismiss. And I thought a better way of approaching it is to ask the question like, who am I becoming or who are you becoming? Because in every moment, we are becoming something different.
Yes.
Like there is no stasis. Change is happening to us. It's happening for us. We can resist it or we can be in relationship with it. And to the extent that we can leverage the fundamental rule of physics and nature, which is that everything is in flux at all moments, where is the opportunity? And how are you evolving? Like every choice is either regressive or progressive. Like you're either evolving or moving in the wrong direction, but you're never the same. Even though we think like, oh, everything's cool. This is the way that it is, right?
Can't step into the same river
disabuse
twice.
yourself of that, and realize like, oh, there's a choice in every moment, and every decision, thought, behavior, action is either moving you towards the person you want to become or away from it. And this goes back to like being in a treatment center, and after 100 days, upon my release, being reminded by the counselor, like, listen, every thought, behavior, action is either moving you towards a drink or away from it. And I thought, reflecting on that, like that's just true of everything, right? If you just replace drink with, this more authentic, fully actualized version of yourself, or, the gutter drunk, regressive version of you, it works in every regard of life. So I think it's a profound question in that regard, but I don't even know what you were asking me or where we were talking about this, but
working with athletes and how do we get them to get to this place where they're focusing on who they're becoming, which is one of the questions, rather than the process of developing who they are rather than the result. Because when you develop who you are, then the results are the best that they can be. And so we start with how do you want to feel on and off the court or the field or the ice or whatever. And often they're very similar how they want to feel when they're at their best. And then start to think about what do you want most, and clarify that. And why are you writing this book? Why are you doing this podcast? What are you really doing it for? And so I often, like I did with you, ask, well, what do you want most for your kids? And what do you love most? And what do you want most for them and for yourself? And so now we're starting to get into a little more clarity. And so redefining success, we want to constantly do that every day. And so Inner Excellence has 4 daily goals. And so the first one is to give the best of what you have every day. Understanding that some days it's only going to be like 30 or 40% of your best. We need to understand this because people run into frustration and they really get off track because they don't have a realistic understanding of what's going on. And when you're on a 30 or 40% day, maybe you're sick and had an argument with your partner and just have a lot of stress, and coach doesn't like you may not have a good day. And so understand, I'm going to give the best of what I have. And that's it. That's success. Giving the best of what I have, not the outcome. Did I give the best of what I have? And then 2 is to be present. There's no fear in the present moment. 3 is to be grateful. Gratitude is directly linked to inner peace and inner strength and mental toughness. They're all connected to beauty. And then 4 is to focus on your routines and only what you can control. So this is the 4 daily goals that we have every day under the overarching goal of learning and growing.
And all of those goals are process goals that have nothing to do with outcomes or destinations.
Yeah, I don't talk about outcomes at all with my clients. When we first get started, I ask them what they want. And then when we set goals, it's really, these are the ones that we focus on. And then I ask them, have you set outcome goals in the past? If so, have they helped you or hurt you? And have they created more pressure, or they really motivated you? Because everyone's different. And so we want to make sure that they have the big thing is the most successful people at anything, like who wins the British Open in golf coming up, they're going to walk by faith, not by sight. In other words, they're going to stay connected to the vision. They're not going to get thrown off by unexpected, unwanted things. And this is what I want to help people do.
That reminds me of a story that John Florence told here a couple weeks ago. World champion surfer, anointed the next Kelly Slater since he was a tiny kid, and was very successful in his youth and won 2 back-to-back world championships, and then really struggled for a number of years until 7 years later, this past year, he won his 3rd world title. But we were talking about visualization, and he was sharing that what he has learned to do that has been most effective is not to visualize like the nuts and bolts of the experience of being in competition, like every detail, what are you eating and how are you, like all the logistics of it, so that you can be prepared for all of the variables. And one of the reasons for that is there's too many variables in surfing. You have it's just like everything's out of control, right? You get the wave you get, there's people all over the place. Like it's impossible to anticipate what might or might not happen. And what has been effective for him is visualizing how he wants to feel out there and realizing that the pressure of having won 2 back-to-back world championships and carrying that burden of being the next Kelly Slater was interfering with his ability, A, to be present when he was out on the wave, and to be attached to these outcomes based upon expectations, other people's opinions, all these things you talk about. And in truth, remembering, like, I know how to do this. Like, I know how to surf. And in order to surf to the best of my ability, I have to get out of the way, right? Yeah. And so when I'm doing my best surfing, I'm not thinking about it, but I do have a feeling, like there's this feeling. And so his visualization is like, how do I want to feel? It's like engendering that feeling. Yeah, and
so powerful.
That feeling is a product of practicing these 4 daily goals, like gratitude, being present, giving the best of what you have, and hopefully inhabiting that, essentially that flow state, that transcendent state where everything is in alignment.
That's really powerful. And what I would also add that would be powerful as well. So I think with visualization, one thing that people make a mistake on is like you said, trying to visualize every possible outcome, and also just seeing themselves being successful, like a golfer seeing birdies or whatever, a football player catching touchdowns. That can be helpful. But what's more powerful is seeing how you want to feel, exactly what he's doing, and seeing yourself overcoming adversity. When you visualize, we want to make sure that your subconscious connects with the feeling that you're going to have when you're out there, and also connects with the great feelings that you've had in the past. And so you might visualize 100 times some future event going well, and then you get out there and you don't get that feeling. And it's largely because when you visualize, the feeling that you had was not similar to the feeling you had when you got out there. In other words, you got out there and you're really nervous. You're visualizing there's no nerves. So your subconscious didn't connect them. We need to find a way to connect the two. So when you get out there, you're going to feel similar. Your subconscious is like, oh, I've been here before. And so part of that is visualizing the adversity and seeing yourself handling. And what we do with Inner Excellence is we visualize handling things that will never happen. Way more adversity than you're ever going to find. Mm-hmm. And so, because we don't ever want to be in a situation where we're thrown off emotionally.
You're dysregulated because of some unanticipated thing.
Yeah, I don't want them to say, look, Jim, Rich, that's never happened in 20 years of my sport. I'm like, okay, well, you get to be ready for anything. That's why we visualize more than you're ever going to have happen.
In working with all of these people over the years, what have you discovered about the difference between the athlete or high performer that gets it, they read your book, they hear what you're saying, they're able to put it into practice and make these changes and progress forward, versus the person who either resists what you're talking about or gives it their best shot, but just can't really make that leap from where they are into the behavior changes and thought patterns that are going to flip the switch?
Yeah. So since I started 15, 20 years ago, the majority of my clients have had the best year of their careers our first year together, or the best year in their last 5 years, but not everybody. And I think there's many reasons why people don't do well. But one of the reasons why I think that I see that people that haven't really taken to it is they weren't able to get out of their own way. And part of that is that ego. And there's a lot of people come to me naturally. I don't care what we do, Jim, I just want to perform better. I mean, this is human nature, right? Whatever this lovey-dovey stuff, it doesn't matter. I'll do it, but I just want to get, and they're not able to make the leap because they're not able to get out of their own way, whether it's ego or pain or some trauma, that they can't see the leap, or it's not a leap. They can't see the connection.
The connection, yeah.
Between, okay, what I really want, it's not what I really want is to win a PGA Tour Championship or the US Open or whatever it is. What I really want is to live a meaningful, fulfilling life with amazing experiences, deep, enriching relationships. That's what I really want. And they can't see, they're just like, all I know is if I win this event, if I get more successful, I have better feelings, I have a better life in their mind, because there's a singular story, singular picture. And I wasn't able to get them out of that. And so if I can't get them out of that, then they're just going to go through the motions, and it's not going to work, because we're looking for a heart transformation, like you have talked about before, new neural pathways. So your reactions when you're squeezed, like an orange, when it's squeezed, orange juice comes out. When we're squeezed, what's in our heart, which is the epicenter of everything you think, say, and do, your spirit, your will, when we're squeezed, we want inner peace to come out. And so that's what inner excellence is, getting this transformed heart, creating new neural pathways.
Yeah. What's interesting about that is I'm envisioning the guy who comes to you because he wants to win the PGA Championship, and then you give him an earful and he reads the book and all of that, and he's like, if I do what this guy says, I'm never going to win. This is going to ruin my chances of winning the PGA Championship. Like, it's very, it's like a threat,
Well, loving your opponent, that's not an American way.
I knew this guy, this was years ago, very successful guy who got into yoga, and he would go to this yoga class that we would go to. And he's like, I can't stop coming here, but if I keep coming here, I'm going to lose all my money. So it's funny how that works, because on some level, your book is a bit of a Trojan horse. It's sort of like the Tao of life for Westerners, but you have to wrap it in this high performance, packaging, so that people are like, oh, I want that. I want to read that. But they crack the spine, and they're in for a ride because there's so much more going on here.
I think it's the same thing that you've shared with the world. You're saying, hey, it's a spiritual journey, and we live in a culture that's like, oh, that's a little bit. I just want success. And so this is the same message that you're sharing.
So how do you translate that for the spiritually or religiously allergic?
It's just getting to that love. What do you love most? And who you become, like, if they have kids, what do you want most for your kids? And often they'll say, like, kind of what you shared, I just want them to be happy. And then I'll share with them about, I think probably what you really want is them to have this meaningful, fulfilling life with amazing experiences, and et cetera. And so if that's what you want, the number one way, kind of what you said earlier, is who you're becoming is going to impact them. That's the number one thing for you to learn, to have this peace and joy in your heart. And I can teach you how to have that and how to pursue it. I don't know if teaching is the right word. When I work with people, I don't say that I'm the teacher. I say, look, I have my own fears and weaknesses and self-centeredness. I'm going to share with you what I've learned, and I'm going to share with you my journey. You're going to share your journey. We're working on the exact same things. I want to have more peace and joy under pressure, and I want to be walk in love, not fear, be grateful, not entitled. And but I'm human just like you. We're going to work on this together. And
what is the biggest challenge that you're confronting with your inner life right now?
Since January 12th, my life has been a lot different. Just so many more cities, and amazingly, this abundance of more people that are willing to chat with me. And so there's a couple things. One is busyness is like Henry Nouwen said, is the enemy of the spiritual life. And when I say spiritual life, I mean a life of deep contentment, joy, and confidence, no matter what. I'm not talking about religion. And unless you say true religion, which is, taking care of widows and orphans and things like that. But this is the path of inner excellence, is how can I get out of my way, my own ego, which leads to fear, and have what I want most, this amazing, fulfilling fullness of life, and work on that every day.
In the context of now being in a situation in which your ego is getting, is getting stroked, more than ever, right? Yeah. Which is all the more reason why you were spared having this opportunity earlier, right?
I couldn't have handled it before.
But now it's being tested, right? And so you have to really be conscious of how well you're walking.
Yeah, there's two things that's a great question. Two things that's going to be really important for me going forward. In fact, God told me at the Super Bowl in New Orleans, in my hotel room. One is proximity to the poor is going to be really important for you. And then the other thing is day 3. So I think of day 1 as January 12th, when all of a sudden the onslaught of interviews and attention. And day 3, it's 3 a.m., my heart is racing. And it wasn't anxiety from too many concerns. It was just so much coming at me. And it was like, how do I handle all this? And then looking at all the book sales, and there was this kind of overwhelm. And I think like someone who wins the lottery or something like that, you have so much coming at you at once. And then it was this amazing moment. God said, look, Jim, it doesn't matter if you sell 1,000 books, 1,000,000 books, or 1 billion, or what your bank account is, how many zeros, none of that matters. You're not going to change. Your purpose stays exactly the same. And look, you didn't do this. I did it. You're not doing it. I'm doing it. So you don't need to make sure you say the right thing, do the right thing, because this was not your doing. And I talk about in the best possible life. At most, if I were to contribute to anything good that's happened in my life, it would be 2% out of 100. God would be the 98%. I talk about how Michael Phelps used him as a scenario with 23 Olympic gold medals. 2% is what I would say is our contribution.
You also give away like a percentage of the royalties on your book, right? You have a foundation for that, or
that's right,
charitable outlet for that.
Yeah, the Inner Excellence Freedom Project. Yeah, so we do these house builds in Mexico with Youth with a Mission. It's amazing. You have to come. It's just the house build alone is life changing, and it's really this understanding when you do it that we need the poor more than the poor need us. It's easy to think, oh, I'm going to go there and do my good thing, but if we just look at our lives, how did we have anything good come in our life? We had to come to the point where we're at the end of ourselves, where we felt like we had nothing. And surrender was the only other option. And that's why when the greatest force in the universe is unconditional love. And the most powerful love, there's a love that's so powerful, it's not available except through weakness and sacrifice. And like, for example, think about the earthquake that I was thinking about in Haiti, this terrible thing. If you're there digging people out of the rubble, are you concerned about what you're wearing and, self-conscious, what do people think about me? There's no concerns about that. You're just digging to save someone's life, right? And that's what weakness does. There's a strength in love that's only available in weakness that comes out. And that's kind of what we try and do with help people understand with the Inner Excellence Freedom Project and building the houses in Mexico. You fly in and out of San Diego. It's 4 or 5 days. But what I do is I add an Inner Excellence retreat to it. And so we do both. We build the house in 2 days, and then we add a full day of Inner Excellence. And it's a way that the public can have this life-changing experience with building a house with this family. Because we get there, there's just a foundation. We walk away, and they're giving them the keys to their new house and new life. And so it's a way you can have both for, most people aren't able to do an Inner Excellence retreat. So this way they can.
And what happens on the retreat?
So we have, with the Inner Excellence, we have, we go through the same retreat that I give over 3 days to professional athletes and people all over the world, and I just take them through that in like a day and a half, and they come in and we stay at the base in Ensenada or in Tijuana, and it's really powerful.
Wow. With all the media attention that you've garnered over the last year, is there anything that gets missed or misunderstood or underappreciated about what you're trying to communicate?
Well, I think the main thing is people putting the attention on me. And like I said, I'm just someone that tried to surrender to this message that God's sharing with the world, and that He chose me is this incredible honor. But I'm just average person. I'm really nobody significant. That's the kind of mistake I think that's happened, is people kind of think about me.
And what is the one thing, as we kind of wind this down, that you want to make sure that comes across, that everybody kind of understands about this idea of inner excellence? Like, if there's one thing that they walk away from this conversation and reflect upon over the coming days, like, how would you put words to that?
Well, there's two things that, so there's inner excellence has three principles that we kind of live by. And the first one is that everything is here to teach me and help me. It's all working for my good. And understand that I think what separates the most successful people in any walk of life from everyone else is courage. And we can all be courageous. And so understand, when you look back on your life, if you want to, anyone that's listening or watching they can live an extraordinary life with amazing relationships and experiences, but it's going to take some courage to master your ego and start to work on that every day, and letting go of who you've been so you can become someone you've never been before, and facing those feelings that you haven't been willing to face before. Understand that self-centeredness is the biggest challenge that we face in performance and in life, and humility is not. I think it's really misunderstood. I define humility as an accurate view of self. It's not overinflated, it's not underinflated, because some people, they don't realize that when you're saying, oh, who am I to do this or that, that's an egocentric thing to say, who am I to do this? Like, who are you not to do that? You're created in God's image. We all have this potential within us to live this life filled with amazing experiences. It's just that we get in the way. And if you're willing to face your fears and work on your ego, then, and have the courage to take one little step today, then anything is possible.
And the courage, I think people associate courage with ego in some regard. Like, I have to summon the courage. Like, I have to, like, my ego, I have to, like, summon the confidence or whatever, believe in myself in order to do this thing. But the courage you're talking about is somewhat the inverse, in that you have to, it's the courage to, like, relinquish the ego, right? And embody, the humble servant notion.
It's also the courage to be afraid. And so Tom Cruise said it so well. He said, he's famous for doing all these stunts and being this megastar. And he said something that I've always remembered, something along the lines of, everyone's afraid. The only difference with me is that I'm not afraid to be afraid. And this is what we want to do with inner excellence, to live a life where you're really having these amazing experiences. It's, are you willing to be afraid and sit in that feeling?
I think that's a good place to stop for today. I could talk to you all day.
Likewise. Thank you.
That was amazing. My inners feel excellent right now.
Awesome.
I'm feeling a sense of inner excellence, just being in your presence. You're a gift. The message that you've been entrusted to share, that has been channeled through you and is reaching so many people right now, is a really powerful one and a great one. And I think it's a beautiful mission that you're on. And I appreciate you taking the time to come here today and talk to me. Yeah,
thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here, and especially, of anyone, I was so excited to spend time with you because of the journey that you've been on, and you've shown us all that we can all have courage and we can all change our lives.
I think that we are all dancing atop reservoirs of untapped potential. And the journey towards releasing or breathing expression into that potential is something we're all capable of. And maybe we're not going to win the PGA championship, but I think we all have a song inside of ourselves that we want to sing. And everything in your book is about how to nourish that expression and walk the planet a little more authentically, with a little bit more grace, and with this idea of love that I'm struggling with, Jim. And I'm going to be calling you because I need your guidance.
We're going to work on it. Yeah. I need it more than anyone.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. And please come back again.
Thank you. I would love to.
Cool. Peace.